morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unfinished Business. I am Rajette Harris, and I look forward to our conversations every week. Tonight, I have a very important show for you. As confirmed cases of COVID 19 continue to rise in the United States, so does the debate over whether schools should reinstate in person learning this fall. Where do health experts, the Trump administration, school officials, and teachers across the country stand on welcoming students back to classrooms amid the coronavirus pandemic? How could their decisions affect not only children and teens, but also the teachers and staff that support them at school? And what steps could parents consider to keep their kids safe? Plus, what will Americans do without football? It looks like we are about to find out, as high schools and even college divisions are canceling fall sports. These are just a few of the topics we will take on during tonight's show. Eric Epstein, a former teacher, college professor, government reform activist, and current Central Dauphin school director, will answer questions on what this school year could look like. Let's get busy and solve some unfinished business. Welcome back. And with me, I have Eric Epstein, current school board director for Central Dauphin School District, which is one of the top 10 school districts size-wise, located in Pennsylvania. How are you, Eric?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Rajette.
Thanks for joining. So I guess the big question is, what is Central Dauphin School District doing as far as opening up? I've heard some schools are letting the older students go back because they're more able to follow directions. But how do you tell a second grader they can't go out and play with their friends for recess?
Well, look, I'm speaking on behalf of myself, and I have rather strong opinions. We have 12,500 students, and we're one of the largest school districts in terms of population and land mass. And the reason I'm saying that is that nobody has solved how to transport kids and social distance. And that's a concern I have because we traverse about 2.3 million miles a year, and our drivers are high risk. Most students now use the bus services. And this becomes an economic issue because we have sections of our school district that are affluent. And if they have resources, people can transport their kids. If you don't have resources, you have to take the bus. So, the first thing we have to acknowledge, regardless of the size, is that transporting children is going to be a challenge, and kids without resources are likely to be the most vulnerable. There really are a couple of things out there. You can have in-person school, which is our brick and mortar, online learning, a blended hybrid, which is what we're using, is 2 days in school, 2 days out school. And then there's also charter school and district sponsored charter school. And the reason I'm outlaying this is I'm a strong public school proponent. And right now, enrollment for charter cyber are at record levels. A lot of people are, taking their kids out of public school. So
now, is that taking money away, though, from the public schools?
Pardon?
Is that taking money away from the public schools?
Huge. I mean, one of the things you have to understand with charter schools is that they are allowed to carry a balance forward, and we have to reimburse them. If we don't reimburse kids who go to charter school, our ABE funding is withheld. That's our adult basic ed funding. And a lot of times it's disproportionate. So, we have to reimburse people at charter, even cyber, the same amount that it costs us to provide education. And, it's a profitable enterprise for charter schools.
Right.
Consistently, their scores are below average. And in a school district like ours, where we have 40% poverty, we take everybody. We have a rather large special ed population as well, a very large English as a second language population. We're a very diverse school district, 19 schools, and 6 of our elementary are on the free and reduced lunch, which is another issue because we're feeding kids, we're transporting kids, we're educating kids, and when kids aren't in school, they're falling behind, not only academically, but socially. and in a lot of other areas. So, charter and cyber schools, parochial, can pick and choose. We educate everybody. And in Central Dauphin, we have over 56 dialects. So we're becoming basically a much more urban school in terms of profile. So that my personal preference would be try to have kids in school as much as possible. I don't think that's going to happen. I actually, and you can see what happened with us at Central Dauphin this week, where students tested positive COVID who are athletes. Is I think it's going to be kind of like a zigzag start. We'll go hybrid, but I think most folks are going to pull back, and you can see the Department of Education is basically, and the governor are moving to move sports off the agenda for the fall. I think that's going to happen at the college level,
I
at the
think
high
that's
school.
best for fall sports. Can you imagine a fall without football?
That's becoming a national issue, and I can't think of anything less conducive to not spreading COVID than football. And I played football, and look, everybody loves the pageantry, and there's a lot that goes with it. It's not happening, and I think we need to be frank that sports are not happening. Even though I'm a fan of Governor Cuomo, and I think Governor Wolf has done a good job. I think a lot of the education, Rosette, is probably going to be distance. And I'm not a big distance education fan. I mean, I'm a former teacher. I taught 18 years. I happen to believe that kids should be in the classroom. There's value to in-person instruction. There's value to socialization. There's a lot of value, not only to athletics, but extracurricular activities. And my fear is developmentally, kids are going to take a hit that's going to wind up paying negative dividends down the road. So at Central Dauphin, we're a hybrid. Most schools are hybrid. I think, as I said in my comments 2 weeks ago, we should have a brick and mortar option, especially for kids that are high risk, kids that have an IEP. And if we don't do, my fear is without a brick and mortar option, the divide is only going to get worse. And again, since we have a lot of low income students, a lot of minority students, we have a lot of students that don't have software, internet, computers. There's a huge digital divide that nobody's really speaking about. You see that in Philly and Pittsburgh, and we're trying to bridge that divide. We purchased thousands of Chromebooks to distribute to the kids, but right now we're planning, and I'm just saying now because it's fluid, on starting on August 24th. A lot of school districts in the area have gone till after Labor Day. Lower Dauphin has, Mechanicsburg has, Derry has, and there's still a number of school districts, in the upper end that are going to try and do brick and mortar. But I think we are all getting ready to engage in a grand experiment. And my fear is this: COVID has become politicized. It shouldn't be. It's a pandemic. This is serious. It's not good. People are dying. People are getting sick. And if the adults can't handle it, how are kids going to deal with it on a school bus? As we were talking before, at recess, during lunch. It's just a failure of leadership at an epic level, nationally. And I don't know how much we can do locally, Rosette. It seems every time, you look at media reports, you're seeing outbreaks all over the country.
So from the sounds of it, Central Dauphin, the school district hasn't quite decided what they're going to do as far as they're going to do some in class, some virtual.
No, we decided to go hybrid.
Okay.
I would personally like to also have the mortar option for kids. So we have 2 days in, 2 days out. And we have two different cohorts, A and B. And, that makes sense because, you have more size and distance to hopefully protect the kids. Transportation, I said, is going to be a challenge. Feeding the kids is going to be a challenge. And then,
but what do you do about, as you know, school is somewhat of a daycare also for working parents. So what do you do with those students?
That let's be honest, public schools are the nanny state. And I'm not saying that pejoratively, but we feed kids breakfast, we feed kids lunch, we take care of kids throughout the day. And that is something that we have to be honest about, that a lot of parents have legitimate concerns that they can't go back to work because they have to find, especially at the elementary school level, a way to supervise their kids. So you are absolutely right. I mean, and there's all these kind of ripple effects. So how do you find daycare for your kids when it's only 2 days a week or
Right.
3 days a week? And you can't assume that because they're in daycare, they're not going to be susceptible to COVID outbreaks. Also, and what do you do when you have a kid in elementary school, middle school, and high school? Kids could be on different tracks. So in the old days when I taught inner city, we used to call it latchkey kids that were left home unsupervised. So I have a concern that we're going to have a lot of kids left unsupervised, two parents having to work. Kids are also going to not get socialization skills. I think there could be a potential gap we're seeing now where neighborhood pods are coming up in affluent districts where neighborhoods are banding together to get teachers for their kids, transporting their kids. So I'm concerned that there's going to be a difference between the haves and the have-nots. And the great equalizer in this country is education.
Well, and as you know, people already complain, whether true or not, that certain CD school districts, let's take the high schools, it seems that they're unequal as far as funding they may receive or as far as what the students receive.
Right.
Before that, some students don't have computers at home.
Yes.
Students that don't have internet. Is the school district receiving more funds from the state and or federal level to supply these items to these students? And as you know, some parents, as much as they might want to, don't have the capacity to homeschool their children. So how does that virtual side of it happen?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we clearly have distinct regions, and in one of our regions, it's more like Region 1 and the CD East feeder pattern. In fact, I think if we're going to be frank and have a discussion post George Floyd about equity, that this is the issue that we have to discuss.
Right.
We can form all the support groups we want, make all the statements we want until we have equity. And that, in my mind, means talking about redistricting, because I think, Rosette, you and I have talked about this. I think the worst kept secret is that, you have two high schools and two feeder systems, which are distinctly different. I mean, and that's, you can, unless we confront that, I don't know that we're going to move forward in terms of equity and the type of, education quality that we deliver. Now, Central Dauphin's interesting because this was, and a lot of people forget this, in the 70s, like Cumberland Valley, Cal Valley, largely rural. And a lot of times we're compared to Cumberland Valley, which is much more monolithic, white, and affluent. CD, as I said before, 56 different dialects, large brown black population, a large immigrant population, so at the end of the day, I think that's the number one issue personally I'd like to see us deal with, because what you just said is only going to get exacerbated, and we're calling that the digital divide. You can supply a computer, and we've done it. We've got money from the CARES Act to do it, but you also have to have a support system in place to make sure the kids are getting educated, they're doing their homework. And I got to be honest with you, I just don't think you can replace in-class instruction. I just think that there's something to be said about. That's why we have teachers. That's why we have counselors. That's why we have social workers. We have all these support systems in place for a reason. So it's going to be a challenge.
So the days that students are in school, to protect not just the students, but your teachers, your administrative staff, your cafeteria workers. Will there be like hand washing stations, sanitizer in the different rooms? Do students, are they mandatory to wear a mask? How do you protect not just the students, but also the teachers and staff?
Well, I think that, look, you have high risk staff. and that is a concern. I think the estimate is 25% of the staff is high risk, and we are seeing more retirements than you would normally see.
Okay.
So let's just look at the question in its totality. It's hard to get bus drivers to begin with.
Right.
Most bus drivers are retired. So my fear is, and look, the Department of Education, for whatever reason, didn't want to have the plastic separation. So I think we're going to have a problem, and I don't want to be negative, maintaining and retaining school bus drivers, getting substitute school bus drivers. And, then when you put the kids on bus, you'd like the kids that are from the same family to sit together. But our school bus rules in Pennsylvania are outdated. We basically think that you can still get 3 kids on a seat. That's just not the case anymore, nor in social distancing is it a good case. And remember, with school buses, you're encouraging the windows to be open up to 45 degrees.
Right.
So that's transporting the kids, I think, is a challenge with social distancing, and it's going to be tough. And then we also, with special education kids, you have to have a para on board and a lift. So there's, more people in a closed area. So with the kids, when you're asking is, I think the staff and I think the unions actually articulated this at the last meeting that they have serious concerns.
Right.
And look, let's be honest. If you have kids in class 2 days a week in 2 different cohorts, it doesn't mean that the teachers are really getting a break. They're in school. They're still getting exposed.
Right.
We have stations. We have masks in place. You have all those protections, but kids are going to be kids. They're going to be. I mean, we've all seen the video of the high school in Georgia.
Yes. Yes.
And kids think they're invincible. It's just look. I don't have a nice, clean answer for you, Rosette, other than to say that we have in place, and we've been circulating to parents, to staff, to everybody. Here are the measures. Here how we'd like to educate. Here's how we'd like to feed you. Here's how we'd like to transport it. But on August 24th, when we roll it out, we'll see how it works in practice. I happen to think that, and I keep saying this, that adults in our society have a long way to go. So, and a lot of times the kids are going to mimic the adults. We just had a situation in Dakota where you had tens of thousands of people get together for a motorcycle rally.
I saw that. Yes.
From all 50 states, which is their right. But, I think that kind of mindset also is going to be present in the schools. And as we said earlier, Central Dauphin just had some positive tests for their athletes, which caused us to delay sporting activity for a week.
My concern, like I mentioned before, is more the younger kids.
Yeah.
The older ones, if they don't follow directions, it's because they choose to. But I'm just thinking back when I was 8. You love recess, you love lunchtime, and those teachers. How do you deal with first and second graders? And I don't remember what year of school you taught when you were a teacher.
Right. Look, I think Rose,
apart.
valid point. In fact, there's a couple layers to this. It's a trauma for kids to start school, first grade or the first year of middle school, the first of high school. So you have that trauma layered over the fact that some of these kids haven't been in school since last February.
Right.
And then you layer that on top of the fact that everybody is trying to figure out how they're going to interact with one another, and kids are kids. I mean, they're, they are carriers anyway. And
what if they do come from a home from one of those parents that say this isn't real, this is a hoax? You don't have to wear a mask. They go to school and they hear something completely different. So, teachers and staff are going to have to deal with those situations as well.
Yeah, and that's tough. Nobody wants to be the mask police.
Right.
You're just hoping that everybody can play well together. And look, one of the biggest challenges we have in a normal situation is bullying. So I can imagine what we're going to have, the mask versus the anti-mask folks. And again, I think teachers have legitimate concerns. You're asking teachers now to do conventional lesson plans and distance lesson plans, to try and pace that continuity together. they're getting up in the morning not knowing what they're going to face either. And so there's a lot of uncertainty. In a perfect world, we would have had more direction from the federal government. I mean, it's
Right.
not helpful when you have the federal government say we're going to take away your Title I money
I
in your
know.
school district, that needs those resources, especially us, to provide special services for hardship and, also provide food services. Now, it's true that it's only, usually around 10 to 15% of our budget, but you have the federal government making threats that you have to do this and you have to do that. And there's
All for a political agenda. We know it's all for school choice.
Yeah, and you have, let's be honest, you have a Secretary of Education who's come out and said it. And
Yes.
and if you look at the CARES Act funding, money has been funneled in that direction. I mean, public school is in a fight for its survival. And we're going to get graded in a way that's going to be, I think, rather harsh because, as I said, we take all kids, and we're committed to gender equality, racial equality, trying to make sure that all kids get an equal opportunity. And that puts us at a disadvantage if we're competing against schools that, cherry pick who they want to have in their classroom.
Right.
I think at the core of our country is public education. 100 years ago, when we were going through the pandemic, a lot of kids were in the coal mines, were in
Right.
factories. So it's a different time, but yet I don't want to be gloom and doom, and I'm hoping that we work through it. It just seems to me that, and it's not just Central Often, all the schools are unveiling different formats. So we're really not sure how this is going to unfurl. And honestly, Rosette, it changes on a daily basis. I think there's a good chance by the end of the week that PIAA may say, "Hey, no sports this fall."
Right. We only have a few moments left, but at your school board meetings, have parents and students come to the meetings to express what they want? Do you feel that students want to go back to the classroom and parents as well overall?
Yeah, I think you have that. We and the administration's in a tough position. They came up with a compromise model, which is a hybrid. But a lot of we had a lot of parents speak at the last meeting. We get a lot of comments.
Hmm.
A lot of people wanted to tweak the hybrid a little and have a deep clean on Wednesday rather than Friday. So there's been a lot of parental involvement um, and a lot of strong feelings. I would say at the last board meeting, everybody was, I would say, passionate, but nobody was inappropriate. And it's one of those things where honestly, there's only so much you can do. We can't accommodate everybody. But I've been very impressed by the impact and the input. People seem to understand that there are limitations. It's not, again, I can't speak for the district.
Right.
Personally, I would have liked to have, and I still would believe that we should wait till after election. Things are changing so rapidly. But the problem for parents, and they have a good point, is they got to make plans now, Rojette. They've got to get daycare now. They've got to return to work now. It's just a shame that this became a political football.
It is.
It
It's
is.
only going to get worse.
It is. It will get worse. And I think, one of the issues for us is going to be this. As we go on and the school year becomes fluid and kids are popping in, popping out, it's going to be hard to get any kind of continuity. And
Right.
I think we need to prioritize, put the kids first, put the politics second. Do I think it's going to happen? No. And we also have a change at the top. Our Secretary of Education is leaving. Uh,
Right.
not great timing, but look, we'll get through this. We'll be okay. I happen to agree with you that I think this will be used as an opportunity for charter school advocates. Uh,
Yeah.
to pursue an option that frankly I don't support. Again, I'm a strong public school proponent.
Well, you said the most important thing, that education is one of the greatest equalizers. And when you talk about racial justice, education, as you know, is at the
Right.
top of that. So we have to make sure, and it sounds like you all are in Central Dauphin as you move forward, that no children are being left behind if they don't have internet at home, if they don't have a computer. hopefully you all have the funds to provide that to those students so they don't get left behind in their studies.
Yeah, let me also point out Title One is for kids, and Title Three and Four has a lot to do with helping us recruit diversity. So when you hear Trump, I don't think people understand what he's threatening to cut off. In order for us to recruit teachers that also look like our students, that federal funding is critical. Uh, I'm not even sure the president is aware of Title One, Title Two, Title Three, or Title Four. I'm sure he's pretty aware of the word entitled. So,
Right.
but in education, it's not just the academics, it's also the sports. Through Title IX, women now have equal access. So, there's a lot at stake right now, and hopefully people understand.
Do you have any last thoughts before we end our segment here?
The only thing I would, first of all, thanks for having this issue out front because it is important. People to be patient, stay engaged, and things were never going to be the same again, and that includes public education and schools. So try and be patient, support the administration and the staff, but certainly understand parents' perspective. They're in a bind. Folks want to go back to school, they want to go back to work, and we're just trying to balance education and safety, and it's going to be a challenge.
Well, thank you for joining us, and you'll have to come back once school starts to let us know how things are going.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I would again like to thank Eric Epstein for joining us tonight. As we all know, schools play such an essential role in society. While debate continues on when and how to reopen schools, it is clear that most people are united in the belief that classroom learning is critical to childhood development, but it has to be done cautiously and safely. Students, parents, and teachers are facing a series of difficult ethical problems. How do you weigh a clear threat to young child's education against a murky risk to their health? What are the rights and responsibilities of teachers, many of whom are over the age of 55 and therefore at higher risk of contracting COVID 19? As Eric mentioned tonight, for many children, school provides a place of security and safety that some homes cannot provide. School lunches, for instance, ease the burden of food insecurity for some families. Schools can also provide safety for some children who face abuse at home. Up to 25% of child abuse cases are reported by school staff. And we cannot forget that education is the greatest equalizer. We cannot leave students on the lower end of the digital divide behind. However, the question still remains, how do we get students back to school safely? Transportation will be a huge issue as many school bus drivers are retiring early due to concerns of contracting COVID 19 from a student. This is part of the challenge that so many administrators are facing. Amid a global pandemic, many efforts to return to normal will be different. Even if schools do reopen, adding some measure of normalcy to life, all the new safety measures necessary to keep students and teachers safe, will be reminders of how much things have changed. All of these things are necessary. They are evidence based, they are best practices, but they do take resources and they do take time. Unfortunately, the coronavirus pandemic has become a political game, but we cannot play games with our youth or the adults who teach, nurture, and take care of them. But unfortunately, not all of our elected officials are taking the lead on this issue. So we must take the lead and be the examples for them. Please subscribe to watch our weekly show on YouTube at Rajette Harris, and feel free to send a comment, show idea, or just say hi to rajetteharris@gmail.com. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. Be safe and join us next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Let's get busy and solve some unfinished business.